The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to the program for this week here on Faith Matters. I'm Ben Ball. I'm joined by Reverend Robert Cornegie, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Bishop Doc Loomis. And as we get started this morning, good day, gentlemen. Hope everyone is well.
Good morning, Ben.
Let's get started with a report that was out by a group that I believe we have mentioned before. We've mentioned them a couple times, I think. It's the International Christian Concern. The website is persecution.org. And it's the 2016 Hall of Shame report. The subtitle, Your Bridge to the Persecuted Church. I'm not sure I want to take that bridge. It's a toll road. But let's look at this. This list, and Doc, you brought this to our attention. This is a little bit different from other organizations, but it kind of lists the trends, international trends around a number of communities. And the United States gets on this list for the first time. Doc, do you see that this list is anything, besides the United States being on it for the first time, anything new that you're seeing or any trends that would be surprising you out of this?
Well, sure. I mean, there are two ways to look at the persecution of the church, at least as far as the press is concerned. One is to look at the numbers of incidences of persecution in a country, then rank that country. And that's what Open Doors USA has done faithfully for many years. And so they annually publish a list of, I think, 40 countries that are the worst at persecution. Mm-hmm. What this group, what ICC does, the group you've mentioned, Ben, is they look beyond that at the actual trends. They look at what kind of what's happening in the courts, what's happening anecdotally around the country. So what happens in a place like Ferguson, Missouri matters to them, even though it may not be an issue of persecution. It sends a message as to a direction a church is headed, or a country's headed. And they came up with three countries this year, Mexico, Russia, and the United States, who did not reach a level of persecution that would put them on Open Doors USA's map, but clearly put them on their map, indicating that our country is moving in a direction where increasingly Christians are being labeled as racists and bigots and homophobes and intolerant people. And they know, as we all know, because we've all studied the history of every great totalitarian regime, that everything in terms of persecution begins with the labeling, right? And so what they're seeing largely is they're seeing a labeling in this country, in the media, in the press, in the government, and in 100 other places, that Christians are we're in the way. We just don't get it. We're not as smart or as tolerant as everybody else. That is a trend we talk about on this show all the time. Most every article, everything we talk about is about how...
Reflects that, yes.
Reflects some degree of that. But to have an international organization like this who's looking at the U.S. in the context of the whole world to say we're really scarily heading in a bad direction is news, yeah.
I think this may point to, and Robert, you've talked about this before, about the problem of incrementalism before, because you look at the Mexico, U.S., and the Soviet Union, Russia, are in the new and noteworthy category. But Mexico, they're talking about hundreds of people losing their homes. People being kicked out of their jobs and losing their livelihood and losing their homes over their faith. In Russia, they talk about, one example they give of an American is arrested under a new law, under a law that prohibits from speaking about faith to another person, even inside your own home. But the U.S. one is a little different. It's much subtler, talking about how the U.S. is shifting current events and shifting perceptions are causing conflicts between Christian beliefs and public sentiment. The cultural shift is what they're speaking of. So This is an incrementalism, Robert. I think that they see as noteworthy and reaching now on the level of where we see persecution of very physical well-being persecution in other countries.
Exactly, and it's on a continuum. It's from bad to worse. And so, that's what we're seeing. We're beginning. They're recognizing the beginning signs, and Doc said it well. The trending. Where are the forecasting? When you're looking at it's like a weather forecast. When you look at the storms coming across the United States,
it's going to get here.
You know it's going to get here, and so that's what we're looking at. The snowstorms, or however you want to describe that storm, is coming. And we're starting to see the indicators already appearing. Storm clouds are gathering in our culture, the U.S. culture, but it's much more advanced in other places, obviously. And I think this is really helpful. I think it was a Catholic organization that recently put out one that there were 90,000 Christians were murdered in faith-related issues around the world last year. 2016, 90,000, close to that number. 100,000 has been thrown around for quite a while. But this actually, it's a great report, and you might want to give the link to this so that people can actually go there and look at it themselves. I know it'll be up on our Facebook page,
but it's also persecution.org.
Persecution.org. And to look at this, because this really, I love the way it drills down into each one of the areas and gives really good statistics about it. And as far as a prayer tool, and particularly if you have missionaries in some of these areas, maybe they're not under persecution now, but what we're seeing, is that this is trending that way. So it would be really wonderful.
I was in a class with somebody who works with a missionary group that helps to train Christians in India. And and we think about Mother Teresa there too, but India is one of the worst offenders in terms of alienating Christians. And Carl, do you find that's not just helpful, but maybe instructive as to where we need to kind of start to be paying more attention, even in this country?
I definitely do. We as Christians. We can sit and we can wring our hands over this and say, isn't this horrible? And I look at this map, and, almost half of the landmass in the world is showing up here as being dangerous
for Christians,
or oppressive against Christians. But like I said, we can either wring our hands or we can say, okay, what are we going to do about it? Where are we seeing it in our community? Where are we seeing it in our lives? We just completed a study on the book of Revelation at St. Peter's, and we looked at the book as a warning to the churches that were under persecution. Don't give up on your faith. We know it's difficult, but just stay true to your faith. It's too easy to give in and say, okay, I'm going to go over to the other side because that makes my life more pleasant, and I don't have to deal with all of these unpleasantries and all of this oppression and my children starving and me losing my job and my house. It's just easier to acclimate and say, I'll agree with you and I'll give up on my faith. And, I think as pastors, we really have an obligation to help instruct our people that we need to stand strong and not give in.
I think many times we have seen our church abdicate its role in the community. And Robert, you're working right now with a battle over a curriculum.
Correct. In the public school system.
And this is where that clash between public and secular and sacred are clashing.
That's right. Yeah. And Doc's recently been talking about some of the battles he's in as well. And we're all, the expression we're born on a battlefield.
Right.
That we can't claim to be neutral. We're not Switzerland. When we become Christians, we no longer can claim that we're not in warfare. Now, our warfare is different. It's a spiritual warfare, and it's against powers and principalities and powers lifted up in high places. And so we're, and we've been given, armament for that, defensive primarily, but the two greatest ones, the Word of God and intercessory prayer. And so we actually have resources to be able to fight. God has given us more than sufficient resources to be able to fight against this stuff, because these are ideas. This is the mental, the intellectual, the battleground of the mind that we're talking about here. So,
and if we don't take part in that, Doc, we are like Vichy France. It just gets run over and pretend to be a church, pretending to be what it is in the face of evil.
There's a line in the report that was published by ICC. It says, anti-Christian entities have been able to leverage the growing secularization of society and culture to their advantage, utilizing the courts as a preferred venue to gradually marginalize and silence Christians using the cudgel of equality. Okay, that's true, but that's not the issue. The issue that we have to deal with as a church is not the increasing secularization of the society. It is the decreasing spiritualization of society, and for that we are responsible.
We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the talk station FM 107 and AM 1240. I hope you'll stick around and join us. And welcome back to Faith Matters here on the talk station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Bishop Doc Loomis, Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Reverend Robert Cornegy, and talking about issues of the day and some of the articles out there. Now, of course, as we're recording this, the President Obama gave his farewell speech last night, but we're looking at a kind of a look back on his presidency from Religion News Service. The article is called "The Obama Presidency: War on Religion or Amazing Grace." We see the opening of this article is written by Adele Banks, and she writes that he has done it before after Tucson, Aurora, Fort Hood, and Sandy Hook, taken on the mantle of pastor-in-chief before a crowd of mourners for lives taken too soon by a man with a gun. And then it goes on to speak about some of the other roles that the president has played, including keeping a faith-based office intact, but also perhaps putting in some other regulations that both shattered the expectations of a secular crowd, and then also disappointed a faith-based crowd as well. But at the end of the article, the quote from the University of Virginia School of Law's a professor there says, they've been right on religion and right on religious liberty more often than they've been wrong. And however you characterize the scorecard, it's nothing like a war on religion. After Robert, we went through a number of discussions over especially the Supreme Court debate on contraception, on Obamacare, on whether or not it infringes on the rights of religious people and religious thought. It seems hard to put this presidency in as positive a spin, I think, as this is. But what do you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's face it. We're kind of measuring from a more evangelical Christian position on this panel. So when the article really draws the boundaries of religion much further than that.
Sure. Including the inclusivity and his statements, right. First President,
Islam,
his statements,
all
Buddha,
the other Buddhism, everything. Yeah. They draw that circle much bigger than we do, and so when you draw that circle much bigger, then I mean, you can say that there have been some advances in religious tolerance and that kind of thing, as policy coming out of the White House, when you talk about the refugees,
right?
When you talk about just on the ground building mosque or whatever. You know, there's been a strong push in that area. But of course, this program is about faith matters, and the faith that matters on this program primarily is Christianity. So when you draw the circle around the Christian, just as we talked about in the previous segment, when you draw that circle around what's happening in Christian relationship with government, we've seen an invasion, quite frankly, under this administration into crossing that supposedly bright line between government intervention into religious decisions. And the government actually dictating how religious institutions and individuals will conduct themselves in this society. So that's, I think, where we get this kind of dichotomy and what this article, the scope of this article.
Yeah, if you're looking for a claim about a war on religion, as you said, if you draw that broadly, then you're going to have a hard time maybe answering that claim.
Christianity?
However, but if you look at a critique of Christianity from this administration, Carl, I think one of the things I know that we've talked about before you joined this panel as well, but we talked about how the idea of freedom to express your religion, freedom to live out your religion, it differs from what has sometimes in the Obama administration been an official line of freedom of worship, where you can, as long as you are, within your church, you're fine. And there is a difference there. And so I think Christians can look at this administration and say, no, that's not a battle that we've come out ahead on.
Right. Well, I think you said you had a lot of those discussions before I came on board here, and I was not a part of those. But I know in my own observations, do I feel that there has been I like the fact that you used the word critique and not war on Christianity. But do I feel like more rules have come down sort of pointing a finger and trying to put a thumb down on Christianity than some of these other religions? Yes, I do. Now, I understand this being the United States of America, there is freedom to worship however you want. And so, the whole idea of the inclusivity of other faiths, that's all a good thing. But I feel like there's a double standard, that Christians are not being viewed through the same lens as the Hindus, the Muslims, whoever else, whatever other faith there is. We're viewed through a much more critical lens.
And Doc, as we come into this kind of discussion, again, we've had similar discussions before, and even in that first segment, is this article fair on this, or is it too broad in its scope?
Well, I think Robert got it right. I think it really is. I mean, this pushes the limits of what is religion or religious activity way out beyond. I can't even see as far out as this thing pushes it. And I'm not saying I'm narrow-minded about faith, but the reality is, as a Christian person, to look at Barack Obama. Look, I don't want Barack Obama to be the Pope here. That's not. I didn't. That's not why Robert voted for him.
Or
it was
the next
not,
president.
It was not. It was not so that he could be our chief religious leader in this country. I understand it, but the way our Constitution was set up, it was very specifically created so that the government would not be involved in this stuff. And everything that we can look at, either for good or for bad, in Obama's administration, Bush's administration, or in Trump's, is a place where the government has inserted itself in a place where it simply was never designed to be. And that's the issue. It's not what the government believes. It's not the law. It's the fact that they're there at all. They're not supposed to be there. So it doesn't. So the government should not be involved in fair hiring practices at Hobby Lobby and insurance at Hobby Lobby, or faith-based hiring in convents or churches.
Right.
I mean, it's none of their business. If I'm a faith-based organization, I have a 501c3 faith-based organization, and if I want to hire somebody, it's kind of important to me they be a Christian, and I don't want the government stepping in and telling me that that's not an equal opportunity. The government was not to be involved in this. And this man has spent more time being involved and making a mess and stirring the pot in religion than probably any president we've had before him.
You know, Robert, I think that one of the things that we've talked about often is the sort of a parallel track of government and religion, and church and state operating on parallel tracks that critique each other, that hold each other, you know, on that track in one way or another. And I get the feeling from this administration sometimes it's like they're reaching over to that parallel track and patting religion on the head and saying, "Oh, just be good,
Yeah,
don't get in the way."
Which is, that's a sort of the good puppy.
Yeah, that's right.
thing. Yeah, occasionally we'll tolerate it occasionally when you know make some mistakes, but it gets back to that basic constitutional issue of the right to religious freedom. The right to be able to live your life, not just go off into a institution like a church or a school or whatever it is, a Christian school.
Right.
And to be able to do your thing over there. It's to actually be able to live out your faith in the way you go through your daily life. That's what we preach from the pulpit every day. Right? I mean, every time we get up there, it's that, look, you know, this is the Sunday is the first day of the week. We offer this to the Lord, right? The beginning of the week. And then the rest of the week is His as well.
Right.
And so
exactly.
It's not just this day. This is just where we come to celebrate it. Because we have been saved. And we go and live out our saved lives, the impact of this salvation, the rest of the week. And we do that with joy because it's this new relationship we have with God. It's God with us, Emmanuel, through the rest of the week. And they're basically saying, nuh-uh, the government is going to put boundaries on that. And you just can't, and in fact, override what you believe is your religious conscience.
Okay, and over those other 6 days that you're talking about, as Christians, what are we called to do during those 6 days? Go and make disciples.
Right.
And are some of these regulations and rules and the way that we're supposed to treat other people, is that putting a damper on our ability to do that? I think to a degree it is. But are we going to sit back and say, well, we can't do this? Jesus, it's too hard to make disciples because I'm going to upset somebody. Well, guess what? Jesus upset some people, and we're called to do the same thing.
You know, I think we have an example actually. If you want to look at the President Obama's Christianity, we might say it's even possibly a folk Christianity, and because he'll look at a problem and say, well, you know, obviously it's the golden rule, and then that's the answer to this issue, or all you need is love, and that obviously is going to solve this. It's not,
or break into a random chorus of Amazing Grace.
Yes, that's right. And so the depth isn't there, that the answer is a bumper sticker kind of Christianity. And I think that's cheapened it in many ways in how we try to strive for our people to be deeper about their
Well, and I think
Christian
that's
thought.
a great point, Ben. It's a veneer, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a facade.
Well,
That's all it is. And many of us have lived through that experience.
We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. Welcome back on Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240, and thank you for joining us here this morning as we take a look at another article. And of course, on Capitol Hill as we speak, Senator Jeff Sessions is being vetted as Donald Trump, President-elect Donald Trump's pick for Attorney General. As we look at this, a couple of remarkable things are taking place as we record this today. One senator, Senator Cory Booker, is going to be testifying against Sessions, which is a very unprecedented move, but we don't know the results or that testimony yet. But there are a couple of articles out interesting about this. One was about black pastors' rally in Washington for AG nominee Jeff Sessions. This is in USA Today. And another one in the stream says George Soros is renting Christian mascots to stop Jeff Sessions' nomination. Let's start with the USA Today article, and it's written by Guy King, and he says that a group of black pastors Monday criticized African-American opponents of Attorney General nominee Senator Jeff Sessions for demonizing the Alabama Republican, instead characterizing him as someone who shows respect and care for people of all races. The ministers are holdout Sessions supporters in a much larger crowd of opponents among Southern black clergy and African American and civil rights groups, including North Carolina Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Alabama NAACP, and the activist group PICO, which uses congregations and churches to help in community organizing. So here is an article about a group that is supporting Sessions, and then the article quickly marginalizes the group right away. And then the other article talks about George Soros, who we have heard the claims before, how he has helped fund protesters in other communities and is said to be funding protesters here against Senator Sessions as well. Donald Trump is is going to be knocked about, no doubt, in all of these hearings by the Democrats, and his picks will probably go through, but then not without some blood on the floor after some of these critiques get through with him. Is this a fair? Is this how democracy goes? That we're going to see this happen? To the winner goes the spoils, or not? I mean, what do we see here, Robert? Where do you see this process going?
Boy, has it gotten ugly
already.
It has been for a long time, and the polarization that's taken place in the American culture is one. I hate to say it, but it's just, well, actually, Doc said it best. We look at the differences, but the problem, the secularization, the division that's coming in, that we've lost this ability to unify and to be like a loyal opposition. Mm-hmm. That you're able to work that way, and we seem to have lost that ability, and it really is because of the church has become so fragmented and so, in many ways, disloyal to each other. And frankly, from our position here, from the behind the pulpit, when I talk to my congregants, I talk about, look, there are essentials that we must all agree on. Unity in the essentials. And as a nation, mm-hmm. That's that a nation divided against itself. This was Lincoln, I think, that said it, that cannot stand. And so, he recognized that as long as we can maintain that unified vision, then we can work through the other bits, the non-essentials. We can give some liberty on the non-essentials. But overarching all of those is to be love, or charity, is the way the saying actually goes, over everything. So we haven't modeled that very well in the church. So I think this is again an opportunity for the church mm-hmm. to stand up, and this group is doing it and saying, look, there's another perspective on this, and we interpret the evidence differently.
In this media, though, DACA, this group is not going to get a lot of traction on their support for Senator Sessions. But in the meantime, though, the Steam article accuses George Soros and his group New America Foundation for doing things like teaching to a generation of leftists to use selective Bible quotes is the word in here, and buzzwords to push a post-American globalist agenda. Here, is this all part of the? Is the Sessions nomination kind of at the forefront of this, or is it just a sideline, or just a sideshow to a larger attack on Christianity and Christian influence?
There is always going to be a war between Christianity and everything else, right? Mm-hmm. That's the way it works. And so we're seeing more of it, not because there's more of it, but because there's less opposition to it. When you take down the walls of the fortress, when the church doesn't do what it needs to do to build a strong body of Christ on earth, then frankly, it's going to be overrun with increasing frequency. And George Soros has been battering right at the door of Christianity for years. I mean, this whole idea of what you talked about, the selective Bible verses, kind of a folk religion you also mentioned a little earlier. That kind of folk religion, selective Bible verse, here is something that was formerly only allowed by television evangelists, selective Bible versing, but now we've got the liberals using it against the church. Is it a part of the big picture? Yeah, I mean this is what we're up against. But again, let's just face the reality. The reason this kind of tripe can exist, the reason this kind of battle is being lost, is because the church is not standing solid on the foundation that we were given, that being the crucifixion of Christ and his resurrection and the opportunity to make disciples that would normally stand against this. We need to be a bastion as a church and stand against the George Soroses and not just fall. Look, the church has created a young generation of people who actually believe the stuff Soros is dishing out. Whose fault is that?
Right. It is a milquetoast church. That may be the fault of that. Right, Carl, what do you think?
Well, again, it keeps coming back to what is our responsibility as the leaders of the church. Right? I stress the importance of Bible literacy. Okay, people need to know what's in the Bible. And they need to know that when you read a verse from the Bible or quote from a verse from the Bible, that verse shows up in some context in the Scriptures. Okay, and if I wanted to, if I wanted to sit here and say adultery is okay, and I wanted to support that with Scripture, I could probably do it. Okay, I could probably find one verse or two verses and put them together. Okay, the woman committed adultery. Go and do likewise. Okay, I can do that. But both of those verses are taken out of context. And the Bible can be a powerful tool to help evangelize the world. But it can also be a powerful tool to turn people away from God's will when used improperly.
I could take that line out and use it in a promo now, right?
No, don't use that in a promo.
Don't worry, I won't do that.
Or tell them that was Robert Carnegie who said that.
Yes, out of context. Do it. Context is important though, and we see the opposition to much of what we hold dear definitely uses our own words sometimes against it.
It's just amazing, isn't it? I mean, what's the big brouhaha? I love that word. Going on in the media right now. Right. Who's the bad guys? The Russians.
Yes, that's right.
And why are the Russians bad guys? What have they been trying to do?
Well,
influence the election.
Yeah.
What does every group try to do? Influence the election,
including Americans in every other country.
And well, just this discussion we're having right now.
Yeah,
George Soros. What's his group been trying to do for the last 5 decades? I mean, they've been trying to undermine democracy and the church and faith. He's an atheist.
He has to validate his lack of faith. Come on.
Exactly. So this is what people do. And for us to go,
I'm shocked.
I am affronted that anyone would dare try to do something like this. Look, this goes on all the time.
Shocked that there's gambling going on in this institution.
Exactly. So, no, what we need to do is recognize it, and as has been stated, we need to stand on the truth. I mean, it was Pilate. The truth was standing in front of him.
And
he said,
"What is truth?
What is truth?"
Yeah.
He didn't recognize. They don't recognize. They have to be told what the truth is. And so that's our job. And if we sort of say, well, this is one truth, this is an alternative truth, this is another way of looking at it, no, we've got to be able to defend the truth. And a little plug for apologetics. So, but that is, if we don't defend the truth, I mean, God's going to defend his truth. He's going to do it. And guess what? He gave us part of the job. Our mandate is to go and tell the truth. They're not going to hear it otherwise. They're going to get a distorted version of it. And so,
but we like, as in our society, and I think this is going around the world now, we like the low hanging fruit. We like the easy to pick out phrase, and the something that we can latch to, and claim is telling us and revealing us the truth, and it's not always that way. It's much more complicated than that, and we have to be able to dig into it.
Yeah, I really like what Carl said earlier about that. There may be opposition, but does that stop us from doing what we know we're supposed to do? No.
More to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Welcome back here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And it just so happens, and sometimes we save these segments for last, but our final segment today comes from the Stream, and the article is called "When Marriage Can Be Anything, Marriage Can Be Anything." I think it'd probably be more appropriate to say marriage will be anything, because what we're seeing in this article, I did not know existed, actually, and I had to look it up. I had to do a little more research on this for about 80 seconds, and that was enough to know about this. Okay, this is from William Briggs, and he writes, it's only irrational animus, bigotry, and hatred that causes some to deny that human beings and fairground rides cannot marry. Love is love, and sometimes love extends to the soaring tracks, twisting hairpin turns, and thrilling loop-de-loops of the roller coasters. Yes, two women have married, not each other, which would be not unusual these days, but have each married a roller coaster. Not the same roller coaster, of course. That would be absurd. But different roller coasters. I love this article. It's just written with the right amount of panache here, isn't he?
Bill Briggs, we need to follow him.
We have to get more from him. One lady, Miss Wolf, 33, a church organist, fell in love with the roller coaster in Knoebels Amusement Park, Pennsylvania. According to one report, although she faces discrimination from employers, most of her family and friends have been supportive. I'm not hurting anyone. I can't help it. It's part of who I am. It actually has a term called objectum sexual, to be in love with an object.
I just realized, do you know there's a song called Roller Coaster of Love?
Yes, that's right. There is one.
There is. So
Ohio Players, I think.
Ohio Players, right. I think she was influenced. What do you think?
Yes.
Most likely. She took it to heart.
And this is apparently, reports are coming in from across the globe of objectum sexuals marrying smartphones, steam engines, video game characters, rocks, trees, dolls, electronic devices, radios, pillows, cars, and yes, the Eiffel Tower, which apparently has several partners.
So do they have tours for church organists going around the world for, like matrimonial arrangements, where they take you to different places? You got to keep your eye on those church organists, I just have to tell you. I love our church organists, by the way.
All right, you better qualify that. The article here is obviously taking on some absurdities here, but they're not done. Because then it goes on to talk about the self-sexuals and points to an actual article in Good Housekeeping magazine. I thought this was a parody at first, this whole article was. And I went and looked, and that article actually is in Good Housekeeping.
Oh, man.
It says, animus, bigotry, and hatred not only motivates people to deny the rights of objectum sexuals, but also to disparage the needs and desires of self-sexuals. Self-sexuals are people who love best themselves, making it natural that the objects of the matrimonial instincts are, well, themselves. And a no less conservative in Oregon than Good Housekeeping reports that self-marriage is a small but growing movement with consultants and self-wedding planners popping up across the world. At least you don't get in arguments over what's going to be at the reception.
Ben, just shoot me now.
Carl's on his
shoot
way
me
to
now.
do wedding counseling. We have to end this. No, seriously, he's on his way to do a wedding counseling today, right?
No.
Oh my gosh! This is you're listening to this show on Sunday morning. You're probably at this point either you've turned it off or you're in your car.
I hope you're laughing.
You're on the way
I hope you're laughing.
you're on the way to church and you're holding the steering wheel of your Toyota in your hands and you're realizing your hands are more on you have your hands more on that steering wheel than you do on your wife, and so you're saying, so maybe I should just dump her and marry my Toyota. This is the kind of thought process that we've gotten into at this point in this life. I told you I knew a guy that married a television set.
Yeah.
This was 10, 11 years ago, and his reasoning for marrying the television set was it talked to him, he could shut it off, and and he actually said, I spend more time with the television than I do with women. Somebody said, well, you should go to bars and pick up women. He goes, I can't. They have televisions.
He'd be cheating on his own television if he went there. Yeah, that's right. The article again. I'm going to go back to this. Says tradition. This says it's the person who writes this book, or it's called "All the Single Ladies, Unmarried Women: The Rise of an Independent Nation." Says it's not a legal process. You won't get any tax breaks for marrying yourself. It's more of a rebuke of tradition. And the author says rebuke. Tradition insists that marriage is between one man, one woman. The two become one flesh. The pairs together to procreate and care, not just for each other, but for their created families. It goes on to defend, ably, I think, traditional marriage, well, we understand it. But we have seen, though, that has changed. And we've watched that change over the last couple of years. And we've all spoken about what's on the horizon then as this change continues. What goes? Robert, I mean, we've talked about how that incremental step, I mean, isn't the marriage of 3 people or 4 or 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Where does that?
It's another one of those slippery slope arguments that everybody hates it when somebody says that.
Mm-hmm.
But, the fact is incrementalism is slippery slope. So theory. So, but we have to read this one statement where she says, one of these folks, I won't give her name, she says, I had cold feet for 35 years, and then I decided it was time to settle down, to get myself a whole apartment, to celebrate birthday number 36 by wearing an engagement ring and saying yes to me. I even made a registry because this is America. I mean, the slope has gotten so slippery that these people are falling out of the trees everywhere. So this is it, isn't it? That once you break once you say that the Word of God is not the truth,
All bets are off.
Everything's open.
Yeah.
Everything.
And we sit here and we read this article and we're kind of chuckling about it because some of this stuff just seems so ludicrous.
Well, we're in the business.
But in actuality, this article, it really makes me sad.
Oh, it's
heartbreaking. God has given the human race this wonderful gift of marriage. And people are saying, no, I don't want that. I've got something that I can do for myself that's better. You've offered me the best. I want something else.
It does kind of dovetail into some of our other discussions today, too. The one paragraph here says, but things change. Governments recognize equality trumped nature, and so mandated that history and tradition be overthrown. And we have seen that happen, and now these absurdities like this may become more frequent, and as you said, it's sad.
And in this first woman, the church organist who married the roller coaster, she says, or the article says, don't scoff. No one chooses to be an objectum sexual. It is something which is forced upon one.
Really?
That's what it says in the article. You know, so
That's what she
this,
said.
This person is saying, "Well, I didn't choose to do this. I don't have a choice. This was forced upon me. Somebody made me marry this roller coaster."
What kind of
Or
tease
be
that apart?
attracted
I mean,
to
really,
a
what's
roller coaster.
what's the appeal of a roller coaster?
Well, I love roller
Are you
coasters.
kidding?
Yeah,
I'm
tell
not-
me about it. Go
What?
through it. Why do you love a roller coaster? Why did you fall in love with a roller
wooden
coaster?
roller coasters.
Wooden roller.
Oh,
Yeah.
the old wooden
Don't
ones.
give me your new metal fangled things.
Yeah.
An old wooden roller coaster.
Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing like it.
Oh, I love them.
But they make you feel good. You laugh. You have a good time. You're a little thrilled. It's
every bit as
mysterious.
scary as marriage.
Yeah.
Every bit.
Yeah. But the really good part is they don't talk back.
Yeah. Yeah. Until
And neither does the Eiffel Tower. That's true. And neither does you.
you know,
When you marry you agree with you.
you know, somebody's going to punch
So
out
it's-
of this show and go to a country station. They'll be playing that song. I want to talk about me. That would only be appropriate.
Yeah.
The challenge with the challenge with where we are right now is this is pushing this out to absurdity, right? That's what we're all talking about. This is absurd. But the challenge with absurdity is once people find
Yes.
out you can marry a roller coaster, then the middle between what God's ordained and absurdity, the middle starts to fill in. In other words, somebody has pushed the Lewis and Clark of
That's
marriage.
right, the
They've
fringe.
pushed the fringe out so much further.
The fringe defines the middle. So,
That's exactly what. Thank you.
yeah.
Gosh, you are so smart. That's what I meant to say. Yes.
We got about a minute and a half.
And then the article goes on to talk about Cosmopolitan having an article that said a mom fell in love with her son and plans to have children with him, which they call genetic sexual attraction. And there's already a forum for interested people.
It used to be called incest, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and at some point in time, you know, we have to reconcile that these absurdities are what they are, and we have to call them what they are and stand up to them, and not just think it's just a fun little article that's out there, but then people are actually doing these.
But we understand what the scripture says about the last day. It says that these things are going to get further and further away from the reality of the Christ, the truth of the man, and that our job is to stay and to stand firmly planted in the truth, which is Jesus Christ, and to be the remnant if we need to be. But that's us Christians. We're the remnant.
Hope you join us next time on Faith Matters.
Thank you for joining us for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith.
Faith Matters is a production of The Talk Station.